So, kia ora koutou and welcome to the first breakout session in the Whero room. This session begins with a short presentation and then we'll open it for Q&A. So please put those into the chat. You can also feel free as we go along to share your tips, tricks and recipes. So it's my pleasure to introduce a leader in waste minimisation, Sarah Pritchett, who works for WasteMINZ NZ, the membership organisation for the waste resource recovery and contaminated land management sectors. Sarah's role as sector project manager includes managing the Love Food Hate Waste campaign. So Sarah, the screen is yours.
Great. I'll just start from the beginning. Can everyone see that? Okay. Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. I hope you all had a decent lunch before you came here because this presentation does contain photos of food. So this photo in front of you is more than enough for a couple of meals and lots of snacks. And that food was pulled out of people's bins during a waste audit in 2018. And I don't understand why anyone would throw away chocolate-coated coffee beans. That person obviously hasn't heard of regifting. Even if they didn't like them themselves, they'd make a perfectly adequate present, I think. How do I get to the next slide? There we go. This photo of food also contains food that was thrown out and we found during a waste audit in 2018. So with those photos in mind, it may not be surprising to know that collectively New Zealand households throw out $1.17 billion worth of food per year, which averages out to between $600 to $1,000 per household. These are the top 10 foods we waste, bread being the worst, with approximately 22 million loaves thrown away each year. I'm not going to read out all these stats because it will just become a bit meaningless if I read out all these numbers, but while you're having a look at them, I'll just talk about my household and why we contribute to these stats. So in my household I have three main sources of food waste. One of them is my 12-year-old son, who's very, very fussy, and if you put something on his plate that he doesn't like, chances are it will just be left there. He'd rather not eat than eat something that he doesn't like. My 15-year-old son is my second source of food waste, and he is over 6 foot, he's sporty and he gets really, really hangry, and he's great at cooking himself food, but often he cooks way more than he can actually eat and leaves a stack of half-eaten pancakes on his plate that no one else really wants to touch after he sort of had a go at them. And my third source of food waste is my husband, who's a great cook. He doesn't like shopping with a list, he doesn't like meal planners, and he doesn't like recipes, and so he often cooks way too much food as well. Actually, I was going to go back to that. My main point about this is that we all contribute, we all create food waste, and the good news is that it's probably one of the easiest ways we can actually reduce our household emissions, because there's lots of easy ways to reduce your food waste. So on our website, down the bottom there, we have lots of tips and tools and recipes that can help you reduce your food waste. So these are my top ones. Use a meal planner. You can use what you have already at home as a basis. So you could look in the freezer and the pantry and the fridge before you go shopping and work out what you have and what meals you can make from that. Make a list and stick to it. That can be really hard, but try as hard as you can and maybe reward yourself if you get to the end of the shop and you've managed to stick to that list. Another great thing to do is learn how to store fruit and veggies properly. We have a storage guide on our website. So for example, onions, potatoes and kumara all like cool, dark places, but if you leave them in the same cool, dark place, the acid from the onion will impact the potatoes and kumara and make them go soft, and you may end up having to throw them out. And the other good thing to do is to use your fridge and freezer as much as possible. One of my top tips is to have something I call a smoothie bag. This is what my smoothie bag looks like, an old coffee bag, bean bag. And I just put any half-eaten apples that come home from my kids' school lunches, kiwi fruit that have started shriveling up a bit, and bananas that have gone too brown. And I get those out I put them into this smoothie bag, and then we make smoothies or crumbles. So this morning I looked in the freezer and I had a full bag of this, and I have got it down to half by making a crumble out of it. So what I'd like you to go away thinking about today is that when you throw food away, you're also throwing away all the hard work and resources that have gone into creating that food. You've also, a lot of emissions have been created during the production of that food. So basically, if you throw out the food, you're throwing away all the emissions that were created in the production of it. Thank you.
Oh, kia ora, Sarah. That was a fantastic,
brief.
No, you were superb at being brief. A fantastic but really sobering introduction to the challenge of food waste. I certainly remember food waste caught my attention when it came to greenhouse gas emissions, when I learnt that fact that you shared, that for all the food waste in the world adds up to a third of, would be the third largest country in the world on an emissions basis, just food waste. The other fact I learnt the other day is if we addressed all the other greenhouse gas emissions in the world, except food waste, we would still go over 1.5, except the problems that come from agriculture and food waste, we would still go over 1.5 degrees. So it is a really a big challenge. My first question for you is, and we'll start with a question for me, and then we'll go to the chat. Great to see those questions coming in. Is often we brush off food waste, especially here at home in Ngātautahi, Christchurch, because we have organics collection at the curb. It's okay, I put it in my compost, I put it in the green bin, I feed it to my dog or the chickens. Why isn't composting food waste enough?
So as I said, when all that food's being produced, there's a lot of emissions being created along the way. So basically, you're still creating emissions that could be avoided. Even if you put it in your compost, you haven't avoided creating those emissions. So basically, it's all supply and demand. So the supermarkets supply what they think people want. So if you're buying food and just throwing it out, the supermarket doesn't know that. And so, that means that they keep supplying more food that isn't actually necessarily needed, because people are just getting it home and then going, oh no, I've got a whole bag of apples in my fruit bowl that have gone mouldy, so I'll just throw that in the compost bin or the green bin. It's not solving the problem at all, and it's still contributing to climate change massively.
Yeah. We have had one question that is about composting, and I don't know if your expertise extends to this, but Lisa's asked if we should have a preference for compost bins or worm farms, or are they mutually, are they the same pretty much?
No, I think that worm farms, I'm not an expert, but from my experience, worm farms do produce a nice juice that you can water down and use sort of as a fertiliser. And they also have a really nice fine soil, but I think they're harder to manage. So if you're not very conscientious, you can end up with, a lot of dead worms. They are, there's particular things they don't like. So, I think a compost bin is still hard to get right. It's not just as easy as just throwing everything into a bin and hoping for the best. But, there's going to be less fatalities if you're a novice and you go with a compost bin than if you go with a worm bin and you, give it too much of the wrong thing, which is things like carbohydrates and citrus and onion and things like that they don't like.
Thank you. Okay, Lee has a question. Do you know what portion of food waste is domestic consumers and what comes from commercial or further upstream, i.e. supermarkets disposing of after a best before date food?
Yeah. We actually in New Zealand, we don't have a lot of great stats on anything except for food, household food waste, and that's because we've done these food waste audits in 2015 and 2018. So that's the only reason we have good stats on household food waste. So there hasn't been as much done. There's been a bit done on hospitality waste, and actually what they found was that a lot of the waste from the hospitality sector was left over on people's plates. So it was like the portion sizes were too big, and people not being too shy to ask for a bag to take home their food. From a restaurant, never be too shy to ask for a doggy bag. And from supermarkets, there has been some work done on it, but actually, without having the numbers in my head, most food waste in New Zealand and in developed countries probably comes from the household and retail and hospitality, but most of it comes from the household sector. So supermarkets give away a lot to food rescue organisations. Two main supermarkets here have partnerships where they do give lots of food to food rescue organisations. So sorry, I didn't quite answer that, but the drawdown project which is all about climate change, talks about how in countries such as New Zealand, most of it comes from consumers, most food waste, whereas in a developing country with not such developed infrastructure, a lot of the food waste will be at the production end. So because there's no good storage or refrigeration.
Oh, kia ora. Thanks for that. I know I, for one, could actually talk about food waste. It's one of my passions all day, but unfortunately we are trying to claw back some time from the delay that we've had in the program so far. So thanks so much, Sarah and everyone. This was a great stimulating start to a long discussion about food waste in Christchurch. And yes, Maggie, I wish we could answer your question as well. Perhaps we'll find out whether we can include answers to some of your unanswered questions in our newsletter, which goes out after this. If you'd like to delve into this a little deeper, Sarah, can you please put the Love Food Hate Waste website or any other links into the chat? Christchurch City Council are also happy for everyone to get in touch. Ailey's in this session and she said she'd be happy to hear from everybody. And you can also attend one of Kate Mead's Food Lovers Masterclass online workshops, which are supported by the Christchurch City Council.